delving straight into today's session. We have our guest here already. Goes by Mr. Oluwaseun Agbebi. He is the certified and sustainability ESG professional with over 11 years cross-cultural and cross-sectoral experience. He is a sustainability and ESG expert. He was working across consulting, FMCG, cultural, manufacturing, mining, oil and gas sectors in Nigeria and Africa, delivering strategic sustainability and ESG solutions to meet organizations' needs in line with several sustainable development frameworks, local and international regulatory requirements, and global sustainability best practices. He has led and managed various ESG requirements and engagements with investors, lenders, development partners, and impact funds, such as the World Bank, IFC, AFDP, KFW, FMO, DFID, USAID, IFAD, AGRA, GIZ, EDFI, Agrify, IDH, FarmFit, NESO, Skoll Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the MasterCard Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, among others. He has also led and delivered over 35 sustainability reports and ESG disclosures written in compliance with relevant frameworks or code, such as GRI standards, UN SDGs, UNGC, IFC performance standards, etc. He has an MSc in Sustainability and Environmental Management from University of Derby, UK, with related professional certifications, licenses, and memberships from GRI, ISO, ISSB, IEMA, ICRS, NES, ASPN, etc. He is an ISO 26000 social responsibility certified lead auditor, implementer and trainer, and certified sustainability excellence associate of the International Society of Sustainability Professionals. Our guest for today will be speaking on ESG and sustainability. That was a very bountiful bio. Can we give our guest a round of applause in the comment section and welcome him to today's session? Can we see some greetings in the comments, welcoming our guest speaker for today?
Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah. Please keep that coming. Welcome, Mr. Shu. Thank you so much for honoring our request for today's session. Welcome on board, sir.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Oluwadunsi. The way Dunsi read the profile made me even think I'm old, but I'm not actually. It just happened to have a lot of acronyms in it. And I think some of those acronyms are things we would get to know or get to understand as we go on. It's my pleasure being here. And I will say thank you to the organizers of the mentorship program. I think Emmanuel is the only contact I've known or I've gotten to know in the past few weeks. And thank you, Emmanuel, for reaching out. Thank you, the organizers. And it's always a delight to be in a place where I can share and then we can rub minds, especially with people from different geopolitical regions or from different parts of the world. And that I can see from the way we have tagged our names, people from Zambia, South Sudan, Ethiopia. I will mention Nigerian people last because I'm calling from Lagos, Nigeria. And so I will say thank you to every other people from the different regions of the world. Tanzania, we can see you. Thank you. So, Dunsin, you are the moderator. Please do well in case there's a break in either my audio or in my slide or anything. Please do well to just button and alert me, duly alert me at any point in time. So I'll be projecting my screen just to share some few things I have in mind that I prepared for, and then I guess there's a Q&A. Oluwadunsin, can you confirm? And then let me know how many minutes I have for presentation.
Yes, so you have about 30 to 45 minutes for your presentation. Then we have like 10 minutes or to 15 minutes for the Q&A.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, so that means we have to move fast, and fast enough we have to move. So I'm sharing my screen, and then I'll put in slideshow. Let me know once
we can see your slides now.
All right, thank you. So I won't waste much of the time on introduction. I will only highlight a few things. It's quite raining here in Lagos, Nigeria. So I'm also being conscious of network, but let's see how far we can go. My name is Oluwashio, as mentioned by Dunsin. Thank you for that wonderful profile. So I've done 11 years around the sustainability and ESG space, ESG standing for environment, social, and governance. I've worked in some organizations and I've consulted and supported a few organizations. The ones I could mention now that I've worked in are Dangote Industries Limited, overseeing 13 subsidiaries across sub-Saharan Africa, 13 subsidiaries across sub-Saharan Africa, and then I was a pioneer member of the sustainability team for Dangote Industries Limited, where I was able to facilitate the sustainability report for Dangote Cement. And I see some people from Tanzania and Zambia here. So we had Dangote Cement in those locations. Pioneer 3 sustainability report for Dangote sustainability reports, 2 for Dangote Sugar, 2 for Dangote Salt. And even when I left Dangote and then became more of a freelance, I'm still consulting for Dangote Industries Limited. I've worked also in flour mills of Nigeria. For those of us in Nigeria, we know the Golden Penny brand. I was a pioneer member of the sustainability team, especially the sugar branch, the sugar subsidiary. Done a lot of consulting that made me interface with oil and gas, mining, investors, manufacturing, and so on. Currently, while I'm still freelance consulting, I'm still supporting an agri-tech who has a lot of investors as part of their partners, and those were the few ones that Oluwadunsin read earlier on. So let's move on. So my presentation is in four, permission to say 4 buckets. First, we'll talk about ESG and sustainability generally. Let's just understand what this term is all about. And may I warn us ahead, there's a lot of acronym, so we call it the alphabet soup. We'll talk about that, then we'll move to some key concepts. When we are done with that, I will briefly highlight sustainability report as a framework for sustainability and ESG performance. And then I will end up with a little brief on career paths in the sustainability and ESG space. So the buzzword sustainability, it's a buzzword. I know we use that word quite a lot. And the word was first used in 1987 during the Butland Commission, which is the World Commission on Environment and Development, where they says sustainable development is a development that meets the present need without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own need. And basically,
apologies to interrupt you, sir.
No problem.
Apologies. So I was just notified now that you have 60 minutes, so you don't have to rush through your session. Yes, you have 60 minutes. Sir.
Thank you. Because I was told earlier. Thank you. All right, so I go ahead. Thank you for that. So when we talk of sustainability, I know the way we use the word sustainability generally, we use it in our day-to-day life to say, oh, something is sustainable. The word sustainability is talking of maintaining something without disruption, even though you are daily interacting with it. But the word sustainability itself as a definition talks more about impact of businesses, impact of organization. When businesses conduct their day-to-day operation, they are bound to have operational impact. They are bound to have economic impact, environmental impact, social impact, governance impact, impact on reputation, on brand. And that is where this word sustainability started coming up. And it's just talking of the nexus between economy, making daily living, day-to-day profitability or endeavor to make profits or make a living, and how it interacts with environment, which is the planet, and interacts with social, which is the people. And social here is not just people outside the organization like the community. Social here also refers to employees, refers to other stakeholders, right? That either we consciously interact with on a day-to-day basis and some less frequently. So sustainability is the word that has come to stay. But the advent of sustainability became more propagated when we started having the Sustainable Development Goals from 2015, which came out from the Millennium Development Goals. If you could remember, that was in 2000 when we entered the new millennium and we had the MDGs. But in 2015, we then have the SDGs. But before then, 1987 was really when the word sustainable development was first defined. And this is the definition, as I said earlier. So when a business or an organization or an entrepreneur or an individual have a business approach that is not just focused on profits, but creates long-term shareholder value. I will talk about stakeholder value, and stakeholders, we'll talk about stakeholders later. And this business creates the long stakeholder value. It embraces opportunities. It manages its risk associated with development of economic development, environmental development, and social development. We say such a business is a sustainable business. I am conscious of the fact that we live in a world where people have bastardized the word 100 sustainable brands, and they say 50 top sustainable brands and the manufacturing. So I'm conscious of that. But the real definition of a brand being sustainable is beyond the longevity or how long that brand has existed. Rather, it is on the business approach where long-term stakeholder values are being created, and then the business is able to manage its development and its impact. Every development has two sides to it. It has risk, which are negative impacts, and it has opportunities, which are positive impacts. So let's bear that in our mind as we proceed, and we talk about this buzzword. Another way sustainability is that sustainability is looked at from what we call the 3 pillars approach. So no matter how you define sustainability, whether it's a definition crafted by Shane Wagbebi or a definition crafted by Dunsin or Emmanuel or any other person on this call, 3 pillars of sustainability must be present. You must look at the economic part, you must look at the environmental part, and you must look at the social part. And this is where I usually draw the line, that being an advocate for climate change, you've seen stories of people who throw the oil paints in Europe when a CEO is trying to make a press statement, especially CEOs of the top 100 companies, and then you then start doing climate change activism and advocacy. While I support climate change advocacy, I must also state that it is a branch under the environmental sustainability climate change, but you cannot say an organization should be committed to sustainability when the organization will not think about its economic profitability. So what we are saying here is that while you think of these economics, the balance sheet, the P&L, making profits, returning dividend to shareholders, you must do that in a sustainable manner. And that's why we use the word sustainable profits. You must do that creating value. You must do that managing your impact. You must do that because you are not just focused traditionally on economic or financial, while you are neglecting the environment and social. You must do that in an holistic fashion where you consider the 3 pillars. So we say sustainability has 3 pillars: economic, environmental, and social. Why is economic featuring here? It's because the things and the resources and the capabilities we need to make advancements in either reclaiming Mother Earth, reducing the footprint and the impact on natural resources, or the impact on social well-being and people and cultural issues require material or financial resources. So a company cannot be doing sustainability and tilt to either economic alone and then or tilt so much to just environment and social. They have to be that balanced approach. So businesses in their operation should not ignore these internalities and externalities that happen. Internalities and externalities refers to day-to-day impact, day-to-day operations, day-to-day development. So if you look at that chart that is to your left, a sustainable brand has been able to intersect very well environmental, economic, and social issues. So I move on. Still on sustainable growth, and I want to really lay the foundation very well. But now I will lay this foundation from the angle of ESG. So we've defined sustainability, we've explained sustainability. There's another buzzword, ESG. And somebody's an ESG professional, an ESG expert, a sustainability expert. ESG actually stands for the acronym Environment, Social, and Governance. And this basically refers to set of standards that sustainability conscious investors use to track and measure the performance of businesses, the investment risk that they pose, as well as how bad or good they will perform on ESG indicator. Let me give this example here. You want to approach an investor, come and invest in my business. And let me say, for the sake of this example, it's a manufacturing plant. You don't have enough capital, then you approach a bank or you approach an investor and you say you need $100 million, for example. The investor would first of all look at your ability to repay back the capital and the accrued interest. Do we agree on that? That's what they are conscious about, ability to pay back their loan, because it's not a grant, right? It's not a seed funding, it's a loan. And while the investor is doing that, that person is looking at the financial issues that could stop you from being profitable, whereby you then repay back your facility. Investors have now gone beyond looking at financial performance to also looking at the non-financial issues that could stop you from paying back such facility. So you have your plant, the plant is running well, running fine, and week 1, 2 persons drop dead. Week 2, community riots. Week 3, environmental sanctions from the government. Week 4, there is a reputational brand issue because of the negative publicity. By week 6, something has also happened. Things that are not financial, that are non-financial in its sense. What that means is that these non-financial issues will stop you from performing, will then make that investment a high-risk investment. So what investors then do is to say, as we are giving you this facility or this loan or this funding, we will not just rate your business case, your business strategy, your ability to your return on investment, your ability to pay back. We also want to rate your non-financial issues, which are called the ESG indicators, your environmental indicators, issues around waste, water, pollution, environmental compliance, right? Your social issues around employee engagement, ethics, diversity, inclusion, hiring and firing of employees, community relations, right? Issues around governance. Oh, do you have the regulatory permit to operate? What are the government policies, programs that would affect this plant from operating, and so on? And then they check it, they rate it. These are called the ESG indicators. And then a company with an high ESG scoring is termed to be low investment risk. Why and a good investment? While a company with a what? Low ESG scoring is said to be what? A high risk investment and a bad investment. So traditional, majorly institutional investors are now using these ESG scores and performance to critically assess their investment yardstick. Here in Nigeria, if you are getting a facility that is above 50 million naira, and that will be in the USD value of, if someone can punch that maths for me with our current exchange rate, that's around the $5 million mark, right? And you are getting such loan facility from any commercial bank. They will not just look at your business case or strategy. They will also do what is called an ESG due diligence, and then they will do an ESG assessment of your business case before they could grant such kind of facility to you. And so bear this in mind, that for that complaint, for that manufacturing firm or that facility that we talked about, when they do their day-to-day running, they will be thinking of sustainability. But when an investor is coming to assess them, the investor is assessing them using what? ESG indicators. So a sustainable organizations are assess their corporate performance using what is called the balance scorecard. And so ESG are criteria to evaluate a company's sustainability performance. Now, if you look at the chart at the downward side, governance talks of company leadership, management philosophy, policies, procedure, and I've done a lot of interface with investors. Before you get any funding, I'll give a common example. One of the current investors we're trying to close out a facility from is IDH Farm Fit. You could Google them and check them out. IDH Farm Fit, after we've checked all our model, they were fine. They then came back to say, these are the environmental gaps we found in this organization, and you have to close it out with this ESAP, Environmental and Social Action Plan, which is similar to what we call an ESMP in your environmental impact assessment study. And so I don't want to go too technical this morning. So all investors do not just look at your ROI. They also look at your ESG score. So we could use ESG and sustainability interchangeably, but if you are talking to the financial sector or you are talking from the angle of an investor, the best way to describe is to look at what we call the ESG indicators, ESG stock, ESG issues, ESG performance, and so on. Let's move on. So businesses, like I said earlier, by nature of operating, will have positive and negative impacts. I like this diagram a lot. There's a cafeteria, and we could see our wonderful man there enjoying his life with a stick of cigarettes. The two other guys by the side, okay, a guy and a lady, are not smokers, but by the virtue of sitting close to him, are already enjoying the impact. And I use the word enjoy loosely there. The fumes, they are now secondary smokers, right? They are secondhand smokers. This is a business entirely. These are individuals. This is you and me. We commute. I decide to move from here to New York by flight. I have impact. Impact on the CO2 emission. Impact in the amount I pay the airline, that the airline then adds to its profitability, pays employees his wages, right? I have impact. The person that drives me to the airport would have consumed some liters of petrol. That's an impact, right? I have impact because it affects my own bottom line too. And these are impact, right? So anything we do or anything organization do has impact. So sustainable business should be concerned about this impact and how it affects the well-being of several issues around them. Well-being of the business, well-being of the people. We talk of human rights, equity, fairness, good labor practice, host communities, health and safety, issues of reputation and social license to operate. Remember, social license are license given to you by a community or a set of people that necessarily is not a certificate. It is the goodwill of the people on how you operate within their environment and how they perceive your reputation. Well-being of physical environment, legal or regulatory compliance, issues of corporate governance, tax, board oversight, leadership, anti-corruption, contribution to sustainable development goals, which is very apt for us in this class, that we'll talk of innovation and business continuity and relevance. So what are these common ESG issues? I took these issues are by no means exhaustive. It's a very long list and it's growing. It keeps increasing, right? So these are just examples. When you talk of environmental issues, you talk of climate change, carbon emission, air and water pollution, biodiversity, deforestation. So I want to start a new complaint and I need to pull down some trees. And then I have to think of my biodiversity. I have to think of, oh, if I do this deforestation, how do I make up for it? How do I mitigate this impact? Issues of energy efficiency. I want to decide between one set of equipment to another equipment. I will look up not just power consumption, I will look at operational efficiency, energy efficiency, issues of waste management, water scarcity, natural resources. These are all environmental issues, and the list goes on and on and on. Social issues, we talk of customer satisfaction, data protection and privacy, gender issues, diversity issues. One of the key things, if you remember, the issues of the Black Lives Matters brought was that top 100 companies in the world started having what they call a diversity quota, where they are now saying, okay, in our operations, we want to employ 5 to 10% people that are racially Black, so as to show diversity, right? Ethnic diversity, racial diversity. We talk of employee engagement, community relations, human rights, not saying, oh, because they are minority group, their human rights and their aspirations cannot be heard, should not be listened to, issues of stakeholder engagement, labor standards, women and community empowerment, and so on and so forth, community youth empowerment. Governance issues like board composition, audit committee. Does the organization have policies and plans around bribery, corruption, whistleblowing, lobbying? Remember, some people will tell you there's a difference between lobbying and bribing, right? So what's the policy? What are the governance procedure around political contribution, whistleblowing, transparency? Is there a systemic risk management in the organization, in the business, in the entrepreneur? And may I say this? All these can be done, can be assessed, can be practiced at different level. For a company of under 50 employee to a company of under 1,000 employee, and I've been lucky to work in and force organizations of those category. For example, Dangote Industries Limited cement alone has about 15,000 employees across about 12 countries. Talk of refinery alone having about 5,000 employees. I've also worked in an organization where they are less than 2,000 employees, worked for organization where they are 100 employees. What am I saying here is that irrespective of the size of the organization, the business, or the NGO or whatsoever, we can all practice this at various levels and at various degrees. The stakeholder engagement, for example, plan or strategy for a conglomerate, right, or in 30 countries will be different from a stakeholder engagement for Agbebi and Sons that has only one branch in Lagos, Nigeria. So start thinking that these things are not too big and they are not too small to implement. We move on to a balanced scorecard. So for a business, like I explained, irrespective of how big or small or large or widespread the business is, for a business to say that it has a balanced scorecard, that business must look at its performance in the triple bottom line. So when I go in to pitch for somebody or speak to someone, I do not just say the balance sheet, right? I say the bottom line, the triple bottom line. The balance sheet for every business is a statement of accounts, how profitable the business is, right? But in sustainability, we look at the triple bottom line, the impact on people, the impact on planet, the impact on profit. So when businesses consider the first two non-financial, talking of just people, planet, as part of its performance appraisal strategy, in addition to profits, we say such a business is said to have a balanced scorecard. So consideration of just profit is imbalance and can tilt the business dangerously. And start thinking of brands and business brands in your mind. Let's not mention it because we don't know who belongs to who, right? But the ones I can mention as examples, I will, and I'll put caveats when I need to. So start thinking of businesses around the world that have been focused only on profit, profit, profit. What happened to the other pillars? you will notice they had issues with their people and they had issues with the planet. A very good example I can give is Shell Nigeria, when they were starting their exploration in Nigeria. I worked within the oil sector for about 5 years and consulting for them. There's this common language. If you've been to the Niger Delta, they will tell you production must not stop. Production must not stop. That was a Shell phrase, a phrase used by Shell Nigeria saying, even if 20 people drops dead due to pollution in the community, production must not stop. And that is where a business is focusing on what? Profit, neglecting the environmental impact and social impact. And we know what has happened to Shell Nigeria now. They've basically sold off their assets. They've moved offshore, where they have, in quotes, less impact with people and less interaction with people. And now there's still that case. It led to the killing of Ken Saro-Wiwa, the Ogoni people. I went back also to Ogoni land in 2020, 2021. My consulting firm was lucky to be part of those that did Ogoni land cleanup. And we went back, and I will tell you that 30 decades of years after this pollution issue, the pollution, the level of contamination in the soil is still very evident. We went there for a cleanup, drilling boreholes, 10-meter boreholes, and I can still smell hydrocarbon at 10-meter level in those boreholes. The groundwater is gone. So restoration is more expensive to do. Why? Because even though Shell Nigeria had its own part to play, the community people started partaking also in bunkery, vandalization, and so on, saying, I will punish Shell. They were punishing Shell, breaking pipelines, vandalizing pipelines, and they were polluting their own environment, polluting their water body, polluting their source of livelihood, their fisheries, their farmlands, and so on. So what I'm saying here is that we cannot afford as individuals and as organizations to be tilted to just profit or be tilted to just environment or people. There needs to be this synergy and has to be well balanced to achieve the triple bottom line. So what then means to say a sustainable business? A sustainable business for me is defined as a smart business. A sustainable business is sustainable. It balances the interests of people, planet, and profit. It is meaningful. It creates purposeful value across stakeholder group. A sustainable business is adaptable. It adjusts to and cope with or initiate positive industry and societal changes. It's responsible. Do the right thing, irrespective of circumstance. Trustworthy. Generate significant goodwill and social capital over time by being true to their strategic purpose. So the question I have to you is that, are you sustainable? Are you smart in your organization? Are you smart in your way of doing things? Are you smart in whatever you do? Potter and Kramer, there's this quote from the Harvard Business Review article in 2011. It says, not all profit is equal. Profit involving a social purpose represents a high form of capitalism, one that creates a positive value, a positive circle of complaint and community prosperity. Not all profit is equal. Some profits are more meaningful than the other because that profit has created social value to the environment or to the community or to people in the complaint. I move on. What are the importance of sustainability and ESG? I think I've highlighted a few of them as I was going through. Reduction. When we start practicing sustainability and we are conscious about sustainability and ESG, we reduce. What do we reduce? We reduce waste, we reduce costs, we reduce risk, we reduce liability. We create value in the market in terms of sales, in terms of opportunity. We attract investors, we attract funds, we attract capitals, we attract talent, we attract goodwill, right? Corporate reputation. There are some brands that catches my attention more than some brands. Why? Because of the kind of perception, the brand reputation, their loyalty, their good relationship with the community. Opportunities. Sustainability and ESG creates opportunity for innovation. One of the critical innovations we have in the world now is circular economy, where we start thinking of how can we repurpose items because of plastic pollution. Then some opportunities and innovation comes around smart agriculture, smart technology. People now focusing more attention on small businesses at different locations in Africa. It's because of sustainability and ESG. We're now having this productivity and innovative thinking, right? Competitive advantage through enhanced engagement, return on investment, and financial performance. Stakeholder engagement is very, very important, and we must bear that in mind. It also helps you meet growing demands of ESG savvy customers and investors. We now have products that they write on the product saying, why we're making this chocolate. Right, you see a chocolate bar, and then they say this chocolate, we try as much as possible. We did not use child labor, because some people want to see that trademark before they even buy the chocolate. So we now have ESG conscious customers who look at the labeling of a product to see, is it sustainable? Does it have a sustainability logo? Does it have a sustainability seal on it? Then we talk of compliance, environmental, regulatory compliance. Then we talk of sustainable growth and profit. All these are the importance of practicing sustainability, thinking of ESG, thinking of sustainability in our organization, be it small, be it big, in our own organization as entrepreneurs, or like me now, I'm doing consulting also in whatever I do. And when we do all this, it brings about brand superiority and longevity. And we move on to what are the risks and opportunities of non-compliance when you don't do sustainability, when you don't manage your E&S issues properly. It results in regulatory infringement. It results in punitive fines and penalties, lawsuits, liabilities. You lose your market share, competitiveness results in that. And I'll give two examples. BMW, if you remember the falsification of the carbon emission test result of BMW, how it affected the performance of the stock. A video that just came out last week, if anybody had seen it, I think I'll take a pause here to check the chat. If you've seen the video from Apple that was released last week about Model-X, has anybody seen that video from Apple that talks of Model-X? Anybody? Let me yeah, someone has seen it. Chinazo from Abuja. That video had created a buzz. What buzz has it created? The buzz where Apple was able, in 5 minutes, 30 seconds video, to summarize its sustainability report, its environmental performance and climate performance in its sustainability report within 5 minutes. Trying to talk about, oh, we are targeting eco this in the next 20 years. We've reduced our energy by 30%, this and that. Those are smart ways, in quotes, that an organization was able to boost up its market share. That same kind of video, look at the reverse, could also affect the market share and competitiveness of the organization. Then we talk of reputational and negative publicity, loss of goodwill, inability to attract and retain the best of talent. The organizations that had said, look, I will not join you, not because I don't want their money, right? But because I feel it did not align with my own core values and do not align with my own, with the things I want to be associated with. And all these are part of the risk of compliance with sustainability and ESG. So moving on, let's catch it. I have two case studies here of when some companies adopted sustainability. Look at this wonderful results from Aberdeen Group in 2009, even though it's quite old data, but look at it here: 60% reduction, 6% reduction in energy costs, 7% reduction in facility costs, reduction in transportation. I like the 16% increase in customer retention and 10% reduction in paper costs. And another one here talks of two complaints, those that adopted sustainability and those that did not. Yes, says, oh, we have a business case for sustainability, and the 20% say they do not have, but there is a 200% increase in what sustainability has added to the profitability. So we will do sustainability, we will think of ESG, it will cost us money, right? But it will cost us less because we would have avoided spending less on our production resources and raw material. We would have spent less on energy because we are conscious of it. We would have reduced waste, reduced operational costs, reduced litigation, attract investors, and retain talent. I used to say this when I say this a lot when I go in for it to pitch to someone, and I'll say, luckily, I'm working with a QSR in Nigeria now, I and my team, and we will be releasing the first sustainability report in the quick service industry in Nigeria. I will not mention the QSR name, so that when it creates a lot of buzz, you will know, okay, Sheon said so. When we were pitching to them, they were looking at sustainability report and saying, let's make it a marketing tool. I said, no. By the time we are done with your sustainability strategy and then finish up with your sustainability report, one thing that will be so evident for your business is that you will see areas where you've been losing money, and you will see areas where you could set targets to gain more money. Even though you are going to pay us money, you are going to pay us money to for the consultancy service and to execute the project. So what am I saying is that sustainability will cost you money, but the return on investment is those costs that you will avoid. For example, cost of litigation, regulatory liability, operational cost, then becomes your return on investment while doing. Another one is attracting and retaining brands. You are conscious of your employee engagement. You are conscious of employees' opinion, feedback. You undo whistleblowing, issues of corruption, issues of grievances very well in your organization. You will not lose the best of talent. I remember, if you lose a talent, somebody who is currently collecting $50,000 per annum, you lose that talent now. It takes you 6 months or 3 months to replace the talent. The next person that will fill that role, the person will not collect $50,000. The person will want to collect something higher. So you will lose money within the period. You will lose money trying to recruit, and then you will pay more for such talent and best brain. Let's move on. Let's look at some key concepts. Let's look at some key ESG and sustainability concepts. The first one is broad ESG themes. ESG is quite broad, but I've always suggested these broad themes for businesses. So you want to practice ESG, you want to embed ESG, you want to incorporate ESG. There are things you need to consider when selecting the broad theme for broad ESG team for your business. First thing is, consider your ESG requirements and engagement with your stakeholders, like your investors, your communities, your employees, and so on. Stakeholders are in different categories. What are they thinking of in terms of ESG? Go ahead, Dunsin, is that for me? What are they thinking of in terms of ESG requirements or engagement? When you consider all this, you embed it and use it as part of what will form your ESG broad team. You also consider how you will implement your environment and social management plan. Your environment and social management plan, your management system, your action plan, in accordance with requirements and international best practice. Remember, that's also a consideration. You also think of what your stakeholders' demands and expectations are in terms of compliance, in terms of implementation, in terms of reporting. Then you also consider what is your key impact in terms of social and environmental impact, and you look at global best practice. When you merge these 5 points together, you then use it to design your own ESG broad team. And I'm giving you an example of a broad team here. And this is one I did for a company not quite long. The broad teams for this organization were categorized under management, roadmap, and strategy. So this is where the company will start thinking of, what's our target by 2030? What's our environmental target by 2025? How many percent of energy do we want to reduce? How many percent of talent do we want to retain? How many percent of our customer satisfaction do we want to think of? All these forms the management plan, the roadmap, and the strategy. Then they start thinking of data for reporting, data to manage. Do we want to use a real-time data management system? Do we want to have a spreadsheet that will be doing month-on-month tracking? What type of data do we need under environment, under social, under governance, right? The third team talks about assessment studies and audit. Oh, do we need a biodiversity audit? Do we need a due diligence audit? Do we need a social impact assessment study to know what our impact is on the social fabric? Do we need an economic impact study? That falls under assessment studies and audit. I'm becoming passionate when I start talking of these teams, right? Because I'm also a consultant. So the other part is talk of reporting. How many of these frameworks, and I will tell you this, sustainability and ESG frameworks are gazillion, they are much. But how many of these frameworks and disclosures or principles am I expected to comply with as an organization, as an individual? So you start thinking of that under the pillar of disclosures and reporting compliance. Then you start thinking of policies, plans, code and standard. Do I have a child labor policy? Do I have a stakeholder engagement plan? Do I have a what's it called? Just a second, I'm thinking of a policy that will, do you have a grievance management system, a whistleblowing policy, right? Do I have a board governance policy that will tell my board that this is how you can choose remuneration for yourself, so that one board director does not just sit there and give himself a remuneration that is times 1 million of what the old business will get or can get at point in time. All right, let's move on. Issues of awareness, issues of campaign, training, capacity building, right? And talk of certification, membership. So which organizations do I need to belong to? Which certification do I need to be part of? For example, okay, I'm in the sugar industry, I will need the Bonsucro certification. I'm in the oil and palm industry, I will need the RSPO certification to show to people that my product is RSPO certified. I'm in the cocoa industry, I will need the certification on saying that my cocoa was produced ethically, without child labor, things like that. And you talk of issues around investors, around partners, around other functional support. Let me put this caveat here. Sustainability and ESG can be driven by somebody or a team as a function. But for us to do sustainability and ESG, it requires all departments, all functions, and all teams in the organization. What the sustainability or ESG team or manager or director or C-suite executive will do will be to use the expertise to integrate, align, flag risk and opportunities, ESG risk and opportunities, sustainability risk and opportunities, flag these risks and opportunities, and then be able to integrate and incorporate across board. Let's move on. The other concept I want to explain is materiality assessment. Materiality assessment is the process of defining the ESG issues, which ESG issues are both important to the long-term success of the business and also more important to the stakeholders. So a materiality assessment, for example, is a full-blown assessment. It starts from surveys, opinion pool, media scan, we do some data analysis, we do some ranking, but the end result of a materiality assessment is called a materiality matrix, similar to what you are seeing on your screen, where you will then rank issues that are important to the stakeholder and important to the business. You rank them based on low, medium, high. And then the business then use this materiality matrix and start addressing these issues one by one. The ones that are of high risk and important, are then used, then form the core basis or core issues that organization will address on the short term. Why the medium issues are addressed on the medium term and the low issues are addressed maybe on the long term as they go on gradually. So these assessments will give you an idea, when I mean you as an individual, an organization, an NGO, a company, of where the greatest risk to the business and the welfare of the stakeholders are, and how to leverage the tool for measuring the efficacy and the maturity of your work in ESG. So a company says they want to start doing renewable energy, they want to diversify, they want to increase their renewable energy by using alternative fuel sources. And I will use one of the businesses I've worked in. Well, the plan was to grow the alternative fuel sources. And I mean alternative, I mean converting waste to energy, to grow it from what it was 0.2% at some point, and they wanted to grow it to 10% in 5 years. Why was that becoming an issue? It was becoming an issue because when we did the materiality, it became so important to us that energy was a major issue that was important to the business. And the stakeholders already flagging it. Your products were not always in the market anytime the price of diesel goes up or the price of gas goes up. And so the business started thinking of alternative sources of energy. Another business will say a material issue to us is to ensure that our customer satisfaction index is greater than 80% year on year. Why? It's a QSR industry. The customers want to say, if you promise me I will get my food in 10 minutes, I should get it in 10 minutes. So for them, customer satisfaction is key. How do they know that it is key? It is based on the materiality assessment that the organization has done. So stakeholders aspect provides an idea as to where there may be opposition and the extent of the material risk associated with the stakeholders' interest. Another thing I would then talk about is stakeholders. I've used the word stakeholders a lot. Stakeholder, this stakeholder. So stakeholder is anybody, any individual who can affect or is affected by the activities or achievements of the organization's objective. And stakeholders are a lot: customers, employees, investors, suppliers, government. So for example, as a company now, if I say my aspiration is to reduce my scope 3 emission by 30% in the next 10 years, and I do not engage my suppliers, I'm deceiving myself. Because essentially my scope 3 emission are emissions from my suppliers and my distributors, vendors, contractors. So whatever we do, whatever we pledge to do, I'm an NGO that wants to reduce maternal mortality by 5% in 10 years, and you do not engage the Department of Health, Ministry of Health, you do not do a proper assessment to know where the maternal mortality is high within the country or within your community, then you are deceiving yourself. So whatever we do or we craft out must be based on the stakeholder, aligning with their interest, aligning with their concern, aligning with the method of engaging these stakeholders. And in doing this, what we then need to do is to do a stakeholder analysis. Do a mapping, identify your stakeholders, which is then going to be essential for you to know how best to serve the stakeholders. In analyzing these stakeholders, you know their influence, you know how to manage them, you know how to develop programs and policies that will align to these stakeholders. And as you are doing stakeholder analysis, you are also thinking of what? Materiality analysis. Are we seeing the interlink? And with your materiality analysis, you are able to design your ESG teams, your ESG programs, your ESG initiatives. I decided to take it from backwards, right? You then design your initiatives and you then know what your targets will be as a business. Mendelow's power interest matrix is a very good tool that helps you to categorize your stakeholders. Even you as an individual, who are your stakeholders? Your family members, your colleagues, your friend, your employer, your business partner. You should do this in your personal life to categorize your stakeholders. And then you know who you should keep satisfied, who you should manage closely, who you should keep informed, and who you should monitor all through in this. And with this, you're able to identify their interests, you need to prioritize. And so this is a very good example I have here. Shareholders, for example. The interest of shareholders is high dividend, return on investment. Employees are looking for higher wages and benefits. Government is thinking of more tax and compliance. Communities are looking for more CSR investment, social investment spending. Customers are looking at lower prices, excellent quality products and services. Who can tell me what will be the interest of a supplier? Interest of a supplier. Let's do that quickly. Interest of lenders. Interest of directors. Who can give me the example of that? I'll use my second device to check that through. Yes, I'm looking. Who can give me an example of what will be the interest of a supplier? What will be the interest of a supplier? What will be the interest of a lender? Yes. Who can give me that answer? I'm waiting for that in the chat box. Okay, somebody say low cost of transportation. Yes, for a supplier, good payment. Not just good payment, paying them on time is going to be a supplier. Accessibility, yes, when you're trying to source for raw material, thank you. High raw materials, high raw material demand, yes, for supplier. Correct. A supplier wants to make profit. Yes. Timely payment. Thank you very much. Timely payment, accessibility. Yes. Quality, good, closeness to market. Yes. Customer service. I like that. What will be the interest of a lender, for example? A lender. A lender or a director of a company. Lender means low interest rate. Are you sure the lender wants to give you low interest rate? Lender will say ability to pay back. Thank you. Interest, profit, more interest, prompt repayment, interest rate. Thank you. Thank you for buzzing that up. Okay, let's go on. I like that. Thank you. All right. So we are still here together. Now let's go to the other broad theme. The other concept I want to explain is SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, drum rolls. And these are 17 goals that was set globally in 2015. And each goals have targets that are to be achieved in 15 years. I will take a pause here and give those of us in the sustainability and ESG space a little bit of bashing. And this is where I will give us a bashing. So you are trying to get abreast with what is happening, and on a news item, you see a CEO come and says, we just launched this brand of phone. And with this brand of phone, we have been able to meet SDG. Let me look for one there. SDG climate action. Where's climate action? Yes. SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13. I've been able to meet SDG 13, climate action. Our phone is fine. Our phone is good. With this new phone, we have met climate action. And I will say, how does your phone meet climate action? Because we have been so used to putting the word SDG in everything we say. Somebody is doing a food program to the streets and is distributing food to people. And the person says, hey, I have met SDG 2, zero hunger. I'm like, no, SDGs should not just be taken at the face value. I distribute food, it is zero hunger. No, SDGs have targets. They are targets that tells you things you should do under SDG 1, under SDG 2, under SDG 3. And so as businesses, do not just align your initiatives, your program and strategy to just the goals. Align them to the targets. A target under SDG 3 would say reduce maternal mortality by ABC%. Under SDG 4, we'll say increase the accessibility of education to women in so region by 10% in 10 years. It has to be defined. It has to be direct. It has to be smart. Those objectives have to be smart. So whatever we do, we know the SDG goals are here. We want to achieve it by 2030. And I will say it this year. We will extend this thing. I doubt if we will meet it by 2030 because the performance on the SDGs by now has even showed that the progress have not been met. But for us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, it requires the effort of individuals, it requires the effort of government, it requires the effort of organizations. But do not just look at the goals, look at the targets. There are 169 targets. There are 248 indicators under 17 SDGs that we have. So when you are crafting a program under SDG 1, zero hunger, zero, no poverty, think of the targets. Align your strategies, align your plan, align your stakeholder engagement to these targets. And that way you drive down the impact that you want to achieve with these issues. So this is my own way. I know we know SDGs, but I really want to flag these issues of the way we put SDGs and SDG goals in whatever we say. Oluwadunsin, you have an announcement for me, I guess.
Yes, you have 10 more minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. This is where I will
Yes,
breeze
sir.
through. So having said this, we need to take our roles and responsibility. So what is your own roles and responsibility in building a sustainable business culture? Get informed, mobilize for positive action, engage leadership, engage people for positive change, be compliant, be part of the dialogue. And this is part of why we are all here. 109 of us being here is part of engaging the dialogue. And I like this: set goals, set KPIs, sustainable goals and KPIs, and try to embed sustainability in your journey. Please note that it is a journey. Let's look at frameworks briefly. I'm going to breeze through. These are things we know. So in after you've done all your sustainability initiatives, program, targets, and everything, a good practice is for you to have a sustainability report or somewhere you can talk about your performance, where you can roll out your performance in social, in economic, in impact. And so a sustainability report is a way that helps organizations to measure, to understand, and then communicate to everybody what their impacts are. Sustainability report is not just about positive impact. It's also about positive and negative impacts a business must. And that's where transparency comes in, even though it is voluntary. But in some territories, in Europe, it's becoming mandatory. If you have employees of 50 and above. In Africa, yes, some stock markets are mandating sustainability reports. In Asia, also Singapore Exchange also has its own. And so in all of these, whether it is a voluntary endeavor or a mandatory endeavor, note that your sustainability report must be balanced. And so your sustainability report must talk about your positive and your negative impact. And in doing that, you need to consider your global ESG ecosystem. Some of the ecosystem are sustainability reporting framework. Some of them are coalitions like the initiatives. Some of them are standards. Some of them are from rating agency. And you must also align them with your industry and sector specific sustainability and ESG framework and regulation so that when you are writing your reports, they are robust, they are good. I will give us an assignment. Please look out for sustainability reports when organizations release them. You will be able to see the different frameworks that they use, GRI. Now we have the IFRS, ISSB, and the UNSDG, the SASB, and so on, CDP, and so on. So this is just to flag that when we do what we do, for me as a consultant, sustainability reporting is very important to me because when the organization do everything and then keep quiet about it, we really don't know the performance that they are making, be it positive or negative. And this is the alphabet soup, GRI, CDP, and so on. I will share this material in the chat box once I'm done, and you could take time to look at it truly. Sustainability reports is a thing that can take you like 3-4 months to write. But the endeavor of a sustainability report actually starts from strategy development, data gathering, and so on and so forth. So these are the steps for sustainability reporting. You develop your strategy, you gather your data, you develop the content, you finalize and you communicate, and you revise with key learning. Borrow me 5 more minutes to talk about the career paths in sustainability and ESG. And I'm giving you this picture. And if you look at this picture, some of them are clear, some of them are not clear, and they are deliberate. I'm not trying to flag any organization. That's why I've taken very tiny pixels of these pictures. There are organizations here that we see. Some of us like them. Some of us want to work in them. Some of us want to work for them, right? Some of them want to engage them. Some of them want to use them as our sponsors. All these organizations all have one role or the other in terms of sustainability or ESG, or require consulting for sustainability or ESG. Barron says they have a ranking of 100 most sustainable companies, but I'm not talking about it. I'm only talking of different organizations. So you as an individual who is in the sustainability or ESG space should first know that it's a journey. We don't become an environment, a ESG or a sustainability expert in one day. It is a journey. Like I've said, yes, some of us will do basic awareness, some of us will be at beginner level, intermediate, advanced, or experts. And even when you become an expert, just like PhD, you zero in on where you are an expert at. So it's a journey. But along this line of journey, it's a series of learning and series of approach of capacity building, mind renewal, behavioral changes that is needed. But these are the kind of roles that are available in the ESG and sustainability space. You can be an analyst where you crunch data for us. You can be a consultant, right? You could be a portfolio manager. You could be a manager, either a sustainability manager, ESG manager, CSR manager, and so on. You can be a reporter. where you write sustainability reports, you do like that Apple video. You could be a sense maker. Sense maker looks funny, right? But it means you are the one in the room. Everybody has said different things, but you are the one that provides the solution to the complex sustainability issues, and then you communicate them. And you could be a transformation manager. This is what the C-suite executives do now for sustainability businesses. And then lastly, this is like my own day-to-day work as a C-suite executive. I am always thinking, how do I manage environmental risk? How do I engage investors? How do I foster employee engagement, even though it is under HR? Investors is under investor relation and finance, but I'm also thinking of that because they will ask me ESG questions. How do I collaborate with the supply chain stakeholders, measure performance, measure impact, report them, advocate for sustainability, incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion in our policies and program? And with this, I will have wrapped up. Even though I also freelance, but one thing we've done with Doft Consult Limited is that it is beyond me, it's beyond my partners, is to say it's an avenue to have consultants and people with different expertise in the room to be able to be dynamic and exceptional and also build sustainability as a whole. And let's connect. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my email, that's my mobile, my WhatsApp being most important of them. And then that's my LinkedIn page. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Oluwadunsi, for borrowing me 5 more minutes. I got excited and lost track of time.
It is
Thank
so
you.
amazing to listen to you, sir. Thank you so much. The comment section is blowing up with appreciation for your time and your knowledge. Thank you so much for this impactful session. This is a full masterclass. I mean, people are definitely supposed to pay for this. So please, everybody, since you can't pay, write $50,000 in the comments. Let me see some $50,000 in the comments. Thank you so much, sir. So we'll be taking questions, and you can raise up your hand if you have questions. Yes, $50,000. Sir, you're a very rich man this morning. Say $50,000. All right. So if you have any questions, raise up your hands, and please make sure you name your profiles with the country where you're from. It will help us know where you're from, who you are, and broaden our view on where you're located. So please, okay, so I'll be taking Suzanne from Kenya. I'll be asking you to unmute so you can ask your question.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Good afternoon to everyone. I feel so happy. I feel so elated to have joined this particular session today. It has been impactful, powerful, and amazing. I am an ambassador of quality, mostly in HIV services in the country. I've just been blown up by this wonderful thing called ESG, sustainability and ESG. And I was asking how I can be one like Sean, Mr. Sean. Thank you so much.
All right,
what do I need
thank you.
to do?
Thank you, Susan. So the journey for being an ESG consultant, I would say we can play our role. I like the fact that you're focused on HIV/AIDS and health and all that. We require the services, so you could get into the ESG consulting space from the angle of health and safety, occupational health and safety, issues of evaluating the impact of businesses on human health. In our common EIA language, socioeconomic health, when we do environmental impact and social assessment, right, is also another avenue into it. It requires a lot of capacity building, and then you need to major on what, and that's why there's no how you be an ESG consultant and you say you know it all. What you then need to do is what's your expertise, and also form collaboration and alliance with those who are more vast in a particular subject expertise than yourself, right? So that's my answer to it, but it's a journey and we are not far off. And lastly, I would say ESG is multidisciplinary. So we have interlink of different functions and departments into it. There are a few certifications here and there. There are a few membership to bodies here and there, but a lot of it has to do with learning, and thank God we have this platform also to share and incubate ideas. Yeah.
Okay, so for those asking in the comment section, the document or the presentation will be sent across to you. So please don't raise your hand to ask that. Okay, so I'll be taking Idris Abdulwahab from Nigeria. So please unmute your mic.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for Mr. Sheun for the lesson today. I really had a good time and I learned a lot. I would like to know what kind of software or tool can be used to generate an ESG data reporting,
Okay.
or like materiality assessment, if there's any particular software one can use.
Thank you very much. And I know, I think Idris looks like a tech guy. He looks like a tech bro, right? All right. So there are several ones on the market, and I don't want to advertise. There are several ones. And even some of the big fours are beginning to design this platform. But these are the two principles behind it. You could design yours. All you need to do is what these indicators are. For example, I want to write a sustainability report. GRI has told me the kind of indicators I need to track month on month and annually. So you would then design that, and from the back end loop, do your framework, all those your things. I will share an experience when I was in an organization and I had to lead, even though I wasn't a tech guy, I had to lead that kind of endeavor. What I did was to first define my KPIs, my metrics, and all that on an Excel spreadsheet. And I gave it to those guys who then used it. I think they used SharePoint. Some of them use SQL and some Power BI just to do some designing. Right. So what I'm saying is that it could be a complicated technology and it could not be a complicated technology. But the key thing you must note here is that because we have so many of them in the market, it is always good that when you are engaging either a software, either some of them are SaaS, software as a service, and some of them are basically like our Microsoft where you just buy one-time license, right? Is to know that it meets your framework for reporting. It adapts to your locality or your peculiarity, because the way you would report sustainability in Nigeria is different from how you will report sustainability in South Africa. Let me just tell you that South Africa, for example, is big on King 4 philosophies, big on integrated reporting, but Nigeria here is big on GRI, big on ISSB, right? And when you go to Europe, you start thinking of the Europe sustainable guidelines, start looking at the EU taxonomy. So there are several of them. From SAP, from Oracle, from Deloitte have a few ones they just launched. So even when you type and then you say top 10 ESG softwares, you will see a long list. And tech guys, sometimes we sign off to these things, we pay license, and you find out that it is not what is peculiar for your locality. So those are the guiding principle. Whatever model they do, they still rely on the frameworks, on the principles and the guidelines, the GRI, the ISO, the UN SDG targets. So they then use that to define the metrics, how to collect the data, distribute it into the flow of approval, assigning the workflow, how to approve it. Then at the end of the day, you collate and then present on a Power BI or a dashboard that makes it friendly for presentation. So that's my answer without mentioning any brand per se.
Okay, so moving on to Ejiro Lucky. She has her hands raised. Can you unmute your mic, please?
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Shin. That was an amazing session. So my question is, what ESG policies or principles do you suggest a non-profit that works around the area of education should consider? Because most times when we talk about all of these practices, we tend to focus on businesses that have services or products. But for those that render humanitarian assistance, sometimes we do not get enough information as to navigate, the non-profit space. So I don't know if you could just probably throw more light in that angle so that we can have a guide on how to proceed. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. For a non-profit, I think the first thing you need to have, you don't need to be big on anything. Like I said earlier, these things can be modified for small businesses, bigger businesses. For a non-profit, the first thing you need to have is your stakeholder engagement. First, know who your stakeholders are and know how you engage this stakeholder. I know you will go to territories where you are even offering somebody a free education and the person is telling you, no, I'm not ready to go. I want to go and learn trade for my Eastern brothers, right? Eastern Nigerian brothers. Or you are in the North and you're offering somebody education and it's a female and they are telling you, no, this child, once it is 16, 18, has to be married off to someone. So your stakeholder engagement plan will then break you down how you handle the interest of the stakeholder, that being one. The other thing I would say you should think about is have a sustainability strategy that details your targets. So my target in nonprofit is I want to train 100,000 girls by 2050. For the fact that you've set that target, you will then need to break it down. What do? Your monitoring, your M&E, your monitoring and your evaluation plan, your costs, your key steps under that. And that can be an internal document. You don't need to go to the world to let them know that's your document, right? Issues of child labor policy will not apply to you. Issues of employee grievance might not apply to you because you are not that big and you're non-profit. But by the time you have a stakeholder engagement plan, you have a strategic plan written down. The time you come to meet, maybe you come to meet Ford Foundation to say we need your funding for our non-profit endeavor. These are part of the things they will ask you in a subtle way. And also you have to keep data, internal reporting, showing the numbers, having the evidence that these 100 girls or 100 men, boys that you have given quality education to, this is who they are. Data protection is also something you have to be careful about, because by the time you are talking of 100 girls, they are telling you, okay, show us that these 100 people are not 100 robots created by AI. And you also have to start thinking of data protection, right? Which is also a sustainability issue, right? So those are I've just been able to glance over it. I understand, but I'm saying stakeholder mapping is where you need to start from.
Okay, so Chinazo Azim, are you ready for us? Since you are multitasking at the moment.
She's in sustainable beauty.
She's multitasking. So you can unmute your mic. You can unmute first. Okay. We can't hear. Okay.
Thank you very much. Please, I have a question. How can we help startups to adhere to the ESG?
Okay.
ESG framework.
Yeah, thank you. All right. And I like that. I mean, I'm working for a startup at the moment. I was a startup. This one is 10 years old startup anyways. So one of the key things startups are looking for is startups want to attract funding, right? And so the best way to embed ESG into a startup is to tell the startup to have an ESMS, environmental and social management system. This is where they are forced to define their policies, define their strategy. So that startup will then take each of its operations, each of its flow, bits of its operations. If it's looking at, let me use the startup as, let's use the common Uber, for example. Let me say I want to start doing sharing Uber. Part of my Uber process is hiring of drivers or onboarding drivers, assessing the drivers. So onboarding drivers, what are my E and S risk under them? Issues of they can lie about their age, they can lie about their criminal record, right? So I will now start thinking of, this is a risk. How do I reduce the risk of somebody telling me he does not have a criminal record? I start thinking of a platform I can integrate to say, confirm. Do you understand? Another part of the startup is, oh, I want to pay. How am I sure that this person is not reducing my profits, my 20% that is supposed to come to me after every ride? I'll start thinking of integrating a tech into it. And then what are my ESG risk of that? People's data will be susceptible to fraud. Do you understand? Cybersecurity, that becomes an issue. And the regular taxi guys will start saying that these people are taking up our job. Start thinking of social issues of how do I engage the traditional people to say, oh, these are the advantage of coming to Sheon Uber, things like that. So for a startup, look through your process, identify your E&S risk and opportunity. It then forms your management system. Management system is not a big word. Management system means says, for this risk, this is what I will do. to mitigate this risk and monitor it. For this opportunity, this is what I would do to enhance it and monitor it. That's all management system is all about. So, and then you can do your PDCA from our ISO: plan, do, check, and act. You can do that as also an acronym to embed sustainability or ESG in the startup.
Okay, all right. I guess that answered your question. So there is one last thing I would like to say that I would like to contribute. Sustainability is a lifestyle. Whatever you're doing, make sure that you're incorporating every step of sustainability in everything you do. And another thing is that there is a way you can calculate your the level of CO2 your company emits from production. If you use generator to produce, you can measure how many liters of fuel you use per day. If you do deliveries to within Nigeria, those bike riders use fuel. So how long does it take to reach from a bike, a dispatch rider to reach your customer? If you are exporting out of the country, the amount of time it takes. I think you have to do your research to be able to, that would help you calculate how much you are contributing, you yourself as a company is contributing to the environment. So I want to take one last question from Abiodun, Nigeria, Oyelere. So can you please unmute your mic?
Okay. Abiodun, can you spare me a second? Let me elaborate on what Dunsin just said.
Okay. All right,
and so pretty much you've just touched on GHG footprint assessment. And I think I've crunched a lot of numbers in my life to know scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emission. So there's nobody that does not emit CO2 one way or the other. And so that's a very good way. For example, I'm talking to you from Lagos, Nigeria now. At the moment, there's no light from the power grid. I have lights in my house. Why? I'd invested about $1 million some years ago on inverters and solar panels. And it was initially expensive to do that. But because it is in my lifestyle, what I've then done is to hedge my costs over the years and hedge the issues of interruption when I need meetings, I'm working from home office and things like that. But for CO2 emission, GHG protocol is something you can look at. I think we're working on a training very soon on GHG emission, but we notice people want to do these calculations, but they don't even know how to do it, or it is too technical, it's over the head, and you really don't know that there are simple things from kilowatts of power from your power provider. You can calculate your CO2 emission. The amount of liters you use in your generator, you can calculate it. Your bikes, your vehicles. Oh, I travel from here to Maiduguri. I don't even know it's a public transport vehicle, but you know the kilometers you've traveled. You know that it is a bus, it is not a truck. You can calculate your CO2 emission, right? So, but GHG protocol, you can Google that, search that out. A lot of training online where it becomes big overhead, then sort out for ways to explain better. Thank you, Joseph, for shedding light on that.
Yes, sir. But this inverter is very expensive. But there
initially, initially it's expensive.
So it is still very, especially for small business entrepreneurs. I won't want to assume anybody has a spare, thousands, but there is this. I was told about this gas converter that you can connect to your generator, so you can use gas. They will get cooking gas. It can be converted to, so it's I think it's much, they say it's much better than fuel even, and much cheaper.
It's better than fuel in terms of CO2 emission, but I will drop this as a caveat, because we are now migrating towards modifying our generators to gas. The price of gas will keep going up. That is where we'll leave it, and it will catch up with us again.
All right. So Mr. Oyelere can unmute. And before I unmute him, please, the evaluation link has been sent. Please fill it before you leave this call, and it won't be shared on the general platform. So you have to fill it here before this call ends. Okay, you can talk now, Mr. Abiodun.
Okay, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. So I'm a researcher in renewable energy, and I have quite a whole lot of experience in life cycle assessment. So from your presentation, I feel there's a big nexus between life cycle assessments and So can you please clarify or provide more information on that? Because I observed that you have more of the environmental impacts and also the social impacts and also the governance. So I would want you to shed light on that, life cycle assessment and ESG.
Okay, thank you. So life cycle assessment is a branch under E, which is the environment, and it speaks mostly to circular economy and also reducing the impact of materials and waste. For most businesses, what's a life cycle assessment is, the word is cradle to grave, right? So what happens from when I create a product till the end of the product? The ways you should look at it is, as you create your product or even your services, along that flow or along that line, start thinking of the impact. Start thinking of the impact and how you could reduce the impact and how you could make the product last longer, right? So you see the move from some people now moving from plastic bottles to Tetra packs, moving to aluminum cans. It's not because they want to be fancy. It's because aluminum cans can easily be melted and then repurposed. Tetra Pak can easily be repurposed into papers used for other things, right? Why plastic? Some people are now say, okay, their plastics are recyclable. Some people say, okay, we can compress it, melt it, and use it for something else. So life cycle assessment sits under the environment very well. And in life cycle assessment, an advance is for us to start thinking of a circular loop. Most businesses or products before now were created with a linear model. Create, use, discard. But we're now saying, don't make it a straight line, circular, loop it. From creation, you use. Instead of discarding, you use it for something else. You use it for something else and it keeps going that way. Let's not speak to a specific material alone, because I know the only thing that comes to people's mind is plastic. Okay, so circular economy is not just about plastic. Circular economy is also about somebody is a farmer, and the person, after maize harvest, after threshing, has a lot of husk, the maize husk lying fallow. Repurpose it. People now, Northern Nigeria, some people now repurpose it as part of composition for feed, poultry feed. So people use it as composition for biofuel, right? So that's also assessing the life cycle of that product. And so it's beyond plastic. It's beyond commodities that we use every day. It's also about your services. So for me now, I say I'm a technologically driven, because I don't need to commit to your office if I can do my engagements using tech. I don't need to bring papers. I'm doing a survey and I need to deploy a survey to a community of 500 respondents, and I'm going around with 500 pieces of paper. When I can go into that community, they don't have network, I know, but I have an ODK platform that allows me save offline. And when I get to where there's network, I upload. And so I go there with an interpreter, and I don't need them to know how to read or write. I don't need them to tick yes, no. I go in my smartphone and I do that. So I'm already thinking of, do I need paper? I don't, right? And so it's all whatever we do, and in one way or the other, that we're able to not just think of the linear, but also think of how we can make it circular and keep looping. And I know at some point, for example, plastic, you circle. At some point, it loses its strength and integrity. You then need to discard. But by that time, you will have reused, thereby preventing more plastic from entering the loop, and then you can then dispose in a sustainable manner. And that's the way I just want to explain without going too technical with life cycle. LCA is quite wide, I know. Right. Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to say something to this. I'm also here to learn, so I want to also be actively involved. Okay, so I'm going to say that even if your industry does not have any method of recycling, upcycling, you can also invent something, right? As I'm in the fashion industry, and right now, I don't think Nigeria has any big solution on fashion waste upcycling. But what we do, and in my own company, is that we upcycle our scraps gotten from bag production to make school bags for underprivileged children in underdeveloped communities. So that way we are also contributing by reducing the level of waste we are releasing into the environment. We are not recycling, we are upcycling. So you don't necessarily have to recycle. You would need machines and all of that to do that. But whatever you're doing in your business, you can also find a way to upcycle those things to be useful again and to give back to your community. All right, so we'll be ending today's session with that. Thank you so much, Mr. Sheon, for taking time to impact us with your knowledge. Can we please appreciate Mr. Sheon and he took his time again to answer all our questions. So thank you so much, sir. And on behalf of ADEF, Africa SDG Mentorship Program, we want to say thank you. You've impacted us today, and we hope to implement this, because it's not only about the talk, it's about the work too. We would implement this, put this into action, and also share this knowledge and educate others under us. Thank you so much, sir, for doing this and for honoring our invitation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Have a wonderful weekend. Yeah.
Oh, sir, they are giving you more $50K. Sir,
I have DOM account too, so I can just drop it.
All right. Thank you
It's
so
all right.
much, sir.
Thank you. Nice 90 minutes with everyone. And I say be the change you want to see. And then as you do sustainability, don't create more problems. Just solve the small problems gradually as we go on. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Yeah.
All right, sir. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so dear change makers, I have an information from you. If you are expected to send the names of those you want as co-hosts at least a day or 2 hours before your workshop. You are expected to send the names of those you want as co-hosts at least a day or 2 hours before your workshop. Ensure those names are the names as what is on their Zoom display name. So the names that your co-hosts are joining as should be the ones you send to us. Okay. So while sending this, start by mentioning the team you belong to and the date and time of your event. This is very important. While sending this information, start by mentioning the team you belong to and the date and time of your event. I hope you found today's section impactful, and I also hope you've been able to fill the evaluation form. This is very, very important. And yes, thank you so much for finding time for this, and I wish you a beautiful weekend ahead. Bye, everybody.